First of all, I'd like to say we are very pleased again to be joined by a very special guest on the program. It's 6 minutes after 9 o'clock, 66 at our studios. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX, as well as newsradio1310.com. And joining us again is Idaho Governor C.L. Butch Otter. And first of all, Governor, welcome back to our program.
Thanks, Bill. Good to be with you.
Hey, we had some big news breaking, I guess it just broke in the last few days, that there is a large surplus that it turns out that the state has when it comes to revenue. And I think I had read $90 million. And then Steve Millington was in our studio the other day and said that there are some other funds, too, that may push this up closer to $120 million. The question I had from just coworkers around the building was, is this money going to be going toward road repairs, or what's the particular goal of handling what I guess is an unexpected windfall?
Yeah, well, Bill, first off, we did have a 90 million, roughly 90 million on the general fund surplus. And what has been confusing some people, I guess, is that we actually show quite a little bit more than that. And what I mean by quite a little bit more than that, because we haven't reached the final total yet, but it could come very close to 100 or maybe a little over 100 million. The legislature and I agree at the end of every session is that if there is a surplus, then we're going to use that money for certain things. And usually it's savings. And so that's what we call the surplus eliminator. And it's pretty close to the final bill that we pass. And so what we agreed to this year, which we normally do, is that a certain portion of that money, that surplus, will go into the rainy day fund for the general fund. We have a statutory requirement that if we have a surplus, there's a certain amount of money that goes into what we refer to as PSIF, or Public Education Stabilization Fund. And we match that statutory requirement totally, so some of the money went in there. Half of the money went into the rainy day fund. And the final part, you remember we passed about a $92 million highway fund, which included an increase in the gas tax and increase in registration. And part of that bill also said that half of any surplus would go into the highway money, one-time money. So the difference between the $90 million that we raised in the general fund and the figures that are being bounded around now is all of the agencies, if they didn't spend all their money, are required to do a revision. And so they send the money that they didn't spend back to us. And so far, that has been right around $8 million. So that's the difference. What you're hearing is the difference between the actual surplus as a result of the revenues coming in and the final surplus figure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's still got to be a welcome surprise, I think, for a lot of people.
Well, it is, because it tells us an awful lot about how the economy is actually going. And all the revisions are a result of a lot of efficiencies that we actually built in during the recession that we went through, starting in 08, 9, 10, and 11. And we didn't want to give up on those efficiencies, and so those agencies are still working to maintain those efficiencies, even though the economy is a lot better.
Got another question for you this morning. I've been keeping track of all of these. I guess you're going to need a program to keep track of all of the candidates running for the Republican nomination. John Kasich announced the other day, and now years ago, Jim Walsh, I went to visit Jim Walsh, and he introduced me to John Kasich. And, of course, you served with Mr. Kasich, and you know him as a governor. At this point, I know that a lot of people don't like to endorse too early, but you're looking at a lot of people in this race, either from governors' meetings or from the House of Representatives. Do you have anyone out there early on that you think is a favorite?
Well, that I think is a favorite, not a particular person, but any candidate. What I'm looking forward to, Bill, is any candidate that has been a governor is probably has I have a bias toward that. And the reason that I have a bias toward that is that they've actually had to govern.
Right.
And when you become governor, when you come out of the Congress, I was one of 435. And every committee I served on had at least 45 or 50 people. And so, your vote in that committee, your vote on the floor is mixed in with 435. But when you become the chief executive of a state, then you become a majority of one. And you have to make decisions. You have to govern. And especially this last 8 years under our present president, or last 6.5, has pretty well convinced me that a person that has served in Congress, I appreciate their service in Congress, but I think a former governor, is much better prepared to make the kind of tough decisions and the universally govern for the entire state, including the economy and everything else. So my preference is that the next president ought to be a former Republican governor.
Got about 2 minutes left. Have any of them already been on the telephone asking you for an endorsement?
Oh yeah. When my birthday was May 3rd, and when the calls started coming in celebrating my birthday and congratulating me on my birthday, I had a pretty good idea who was running for president.
There are a number of them, though, that you would consider close friends.
Oh, yeah. I consider, in fact, John Kasich is, he is not only is he a good friend of mine, but I want to remind folks that John Kasich was the chairman of the Budget Committee in the Congress that established for decades the very first surplus and balanced budget. He was the chairman of the Budget Committee, and did a tremendous job of figuring out what was nice and what was necessary, which is exactly what every governor has to do, especially during the recession. And we eliminated the nice and focused on the necessary. And that's how we got through the recession, and that's why our economy is doing well today.
I know you've got some other people to talk to this morning, about 30, 40 seconds here. Anything that you need to quickly mention that we didn't leave on the or didn't have on the table yet?
Well, do know this, that I have sent a letter to the Adjutant General, the TAG, of Idaho, who is the commanding general, and said, listen, do whatever's necessary to safeguard our recruiters, not only at the recruiting stations, but also in all our military folks at the Armory. Do whatever is necessary, and let me know what you want to do, and I'm behind it.
Thank you. I think a lot of people are going to be glad to hear that. Again, we look forward to talking to you again sometime soon. I know you have a lot of other folks this morning in line, so we'll give you an opportunity to do that as well.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate it.
Take care, sir.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye. Governor Butch Otter joining us this morning on KLIX and sharing a couple of thoughts with us about state surplus, as well as the number of people running for the Republican nomination for president, and he giving us a rundown of his thoughts on that. And he said, look, I favor someone who has actually been a governor, because it gives you a better insight overall into what you're going to be doing if you get elected president. 9:16, we have some people, I think, who were trying to get through to the governor, and I had a tight window this morning with him because he's going to be on the air in Idaho Falls and Pocatello and Boise and Nampa this morning as well. So we had just a limited amount of time with him. And in fact, he does this on an occasional Thursday morning where he does an entire whip around with radio stations around the state. But if you've got a question or comment for me about his conversation with us or just a reflection on it, feel free to give me a telephone call at 736-0300. That's 736-0300. It's 9:16:67. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And you're on the air.
I actually had a question, and maybe next time you get someone on from the state government, you can ask them. With the budgeting, do they punish the different parts of the, I don't know how to word it, people in the government that don't spend their whole budget? Do they punish them by taking that amount away from them? Because I know that's a lot of problems that we have in government spending, is that they not only do they have baseline budgeting, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of, but they also will, if they don't spend the money they're allotted, they actually give them less money the next time around.
Two things.
To me, that says, hey, you're going to waste money, and that's what we're encouraging you to do.
Two things. The governor has told me a few weeks back that he's looking forward to coming into the studio for sometime soon for an hour, and he'll take telephone calls when he does that because he's got a little bit more wiggle room with his schedule on that particular day. We haven't set it up yet, but it's coming up soon. Number two, when my dad was working as a state employee in New York and he was running a state park, if he did not spend everything in his budget, he would lose it. He would lose it the next year. And that is true. You have people out there who then try to spend everything they have, if not a little bit more, believing that they need that the upcoming year. 917, you're on the air on News Radio 1310 KLIX.
Well, thank you. Now that the budget's in a surplus, of course, now we can take off the 7% gas tax.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Sure. That's the problem with raising taxes, as far as I'm concerned. They raise the taxes when the economy is down, and then it never goes away. And as far as I'm concerned, that's sad and should have never been done. But there's a hue and cry of, our roads are in terrible shape, which is nonsense. But they just, went ahead and did it anyway.
I have to say this. He'd need to get the entire legislature together, even if they wanted to repeal that, and that's not happening again until sometime January, right? So we're looking at a long time before that's reconsidered. Although it does seem some of this money, will be going in the direction of transportation. And after that $92 million transportation repair fund was put together, I think the figure was we were still $158 million away from what they figured was needed in total. So if you have $90 million to $100 million right now, unfortunately, you can't put all of that into that. So the tax stays, whether you like it or not. The gasoline prices have dropped slightly, but a friend of mine sent me a picture the other day from his neighborhood in Connecticut. Now, you would think those big East Coast states would have much more in the way of taxes and the like. His gasoline prices right now are lower than ours. And I just thought, for the first time in my life, I'm jealous of someone in Connecticut. Probably the only time in my life. Let me put that out there, too, as well. 20 minutes after 9 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX, as well as newsradio1310.com, which means you can hear us online anywhere all over the world by clicking on that Listen Live icon. Coming up in a few minutes, there is a continuing debate going on about an investigation into Planned Parenthood, but get this. If the government does an investigation, they may end up investigating the people who got the videos of Planned Parenthood bragging about how they kill little babies in the wombs. I kid you not. Details coming up.